Welcome to Twist of Revenge, where we tell stories that don't just entertain. They make you feel something. If you believe stories about family, forgiveness, and the quiet strength of love are worth sharing, consider subscribing. We'd be honored to have you here. Today's story is called "We Left Our Father in a Nursing Home, Then Discovered He Was the Anonymous Donor Behind Our Children's Scholarships." Let's begin. They say the way you leave someone says a lot about how you ever loved them. We left our father on a Tuesday morning. The sky was the kind of gray that made everything feel heavier, even the air. He stood at the curb with his weathered coat buttoned all the way to the top, a suitcase in one hand and a grocery bag filled with worn books and framed photographs in the other. No one cried. No one made a scene. We told ourselves we were doing the right thing, the responsible thing. "Dad will be safer there," my brother Mark had said. "He'll have nurses, meals on time, activities. It's better than him being alone," I added, almost convincing myself. Even my sister Lily, who used to sit on Dad's lap every evening as a child, nodded in agreement. And so we drove him to Rosewood Hills, a quiet nursing facility nestled behind a line of oaks just outside town. He didn't ask many questions. He didn't argue. He just sat in the back seat, hands folded in his lap, eyes looking out the window as if he already knew this day would come and had made peace with it long ago. At the check-in desk, he smiled gently as he signed the forms. "I suppose this is where old men go when their usefulness runs out," he chuckled, though no one laughed. We told him we'd visit. We told ourselves we would. But life, with its meetings, school drop-offs, bills and birthdays, has a way of getting louder than guilt. And so days turned into weeks. Visits became calls. Calls became silence. It's strange, looking back, how quickly we adjust to absence. Dad had always been there, always fixing something, always humming old Sinatra tunes while trimming the hedges, always reminding us to save more, waste less, and be kind, even when people weren't kind to us. But somewhere along the way, he became a shadow in our rearview mirror. Not out of cruelty, no, never that, but out of convenience, out of that dangerous belief that there will always be more time. The truth is, we saw our father as a burden. He never said it, but I think he knew. He never asked for much, but still we gave less. What we didn't know, what none of us could have imagined, was that the very man we left behind would quietly sacrifice everything he had for the future of the children we claimed to love so dearly. He sold the last pieces of his life, quietly, discreetly, so that our kids could one day chase dreams we never even dared to dream ourselves. But that part of the story, that revelation, would come later. For now, all we knew was this: we had left our father in a nursing home, and we had told ourselves it was for the best. Chapter 2, A Man Fading in the Background. The first time we skipped a weekend visit, no one said anything. Mark had a conference. Lily's youngest had the flu. I told myself I'd go next week when things settled down. They never did, but we weren't bad children. At least that's what we believed. We sent fruit baskets for Father's Day, called on birthdays, sometimes a day or two late. I made a photo calendar with pictures of the grandkids, emailed it to the nursing home. They said they'd print it out and pin it on his wall. I never checked if they did. We were busy. Life was noisy, and Dad was quiet. He didn't text or email. He wrote letters still. His cursive neat, slow, full of stories that didn't always have a point but always had warmth. We'd find his notes in the mail. "The sunrise was beautiful this morning. The magnolia is finally blooming outside my window." Sometimes he'd ask, "How's Olivia's piano practice?" Or, tell Ethan I still have that Lego spaceship he left behind. We would skim them, mean to write back, forget, repeat. Looking back now, I wonder how often he waited by the window for anyone to pull into the parking lot. He never complained. The nurses said he was polite, never caused trouble. He offered to help in the garden behind the facility, watered the hydrangeas, talked to the residents no one else talked to, fixed squeaky wheels on walkers, tightened screws on loose dining chairs. Mr. Adler's hands are never idle, one nurse laughed when I visited months later. He's got that old-world sense of usefulness. That word stuck with me, usefulness. Maybe that's what he was clinging to. Maybe that's what we took from him. The moment we dropped him off with 2 bags and no plan. One day during a rare visit, Lily asked if he needed anything: new slippers, reading glasses, snacks. He smiled and shook his head. I have more than I need. Do you have enough spending money? She pressed. I'm not spending much these days, just the occasional coffee for the staff. They've got tough jobs. Then he changed the subject. That's how he was. Whenever conversation brushed up against his needs, he'd gently turn it toward someone else's. At the time, we thought it was pride or stubbornness. The truth was something else entirely. Months passed, a few more visits, a few more letters. In one he enclosed a pressed flower from the garden of forget-me-not. He wrote, "The smallest things often outlast us. I like that thought." At the time, I thought it was poetic. I didn't realize it was a breadcrumb. I remember one particular afternoon when I dropped off a coat for him before winter. He was outside on the bench near the courtyard, talking with a young nurse's aide, maybe 22, still learning how to balance kindness and exhaustion. He was laughing, not big belly laughter, but the soft kind, the kind he used when we were small and asking big questions. I stood there for a minute, unnoticed. He looked content, not joyful, not radiant, but at peace in a way that made me feel strangely sad. He had grown smaller somehow, not physically, though the weight loss was obvious, but in presence. He no longer filled a room the way he once did. He was shrinking into the background like furniture that's always been there. I left without saying much that day. Just a hug, a short conversation, and a promise to come back soon. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the man who once woke up at 5 a.m. every day to pack our lunches. The man who spent weekends building science fair projects with Mark, who taught Lily how to parallel park in an empty lot behind the church, who stayed up with me through every college rejection letter, offering hot tea and silence when words felt too heavy. That man was still in there. We just weren't looking closely enough. We didn't know it yet, but our father was doing something quietly remarkable. He was spending his days writing letters, signing documents, making arrangements. He was meeting with people, school administrators, accountants, lawyers, all without ever telling us. While we were busy scheduling soccer practices and booking vacation rentals and upgrading our phones, he was carefully dismantling the small life he had left. Not out of despair, but out of love. Because while we saw him as a fading man, he saw a future that still mattered. Not his future, ours, and more specifically, the future of the grandchildren who still remembered the warmth of his lap and the scratch of his chin when he kissed them good night. The very ones who would one day be told they'd received a scholarship from someone they didn't even know had anything left to give. Chapter 3. The envelope we almost ignored. It started, like most important things do, quietly. A plain white envelope arrived in Lily's mailbox one Thursday afternoon. It was addressed to the parents or guardians of Olivia Pierce. Her eldest daughter, 14, bright, quiet, obsessed with marine biology and purple nail polish. At first, Lily thought it was another PTA flyer, or one of those fundraising letters schools send home right before spring break. She nearly tossed it on the kitchen counter and forgot about it. But something about the handwriting gave her pause. Not printed, not typed. Handwritten, neat cursive, a little shaky but deliberate, like someone took time. She slit the envelope open with a butter knife. The letter inside was from Olivia's school principal. It congratulated the family on Olivia being selected for a Legacy Opportunity Scholarship, a full tuition to a private STEM summer program at the local university. Room, board, books, supplies, all covered. Lily blinked at the page, confused. She hadn't applied for any scholarships. Olivia hadn't either. The summer camp had been mentioned in passing, but the fee, nearly $3,000, was something they had quickly written off as unrealistic. There was no mention of who had nominated her, just a line near the end, made possible through the generosity of an anonymous donor whose commitment to the future of this community's children is deeply appreciated. Lily reread that sentence 3 times, then once more slower. That evening she called me. "Do you think this is real?" she asked, her voice somewhere between wonder and suspicion. I was washing dishes, speakerphone on, steam curling up around the sink. "What do you mean? Like, is it a scam?" "No, I mean I called the school. It's real. It's just strange. We didn't apply. And they said she was nominated by someone who asked not to be named. Doesn't that feel, I don't know, odd?" I didn't answer right away because truthfully I didn't think it was odd. I thought it was familiar, that phrasing, that anonymous kindness, that sounded like Dad, but I didn't say that out loud, not yet, because we hadn't earned the right to guess such things. Later that week Mark called. His son Ethan, 10 years old, bookish, already obsessed with building model rockets, had also received a scholarship. Different program, same phrasing, same envelope, same signature at the bottom. Mark, of course, joked about it. "Guess someone out there's feeling generous," he said. "About time the universe threw us a bone." But he didn't question it much. He was too busy driving between practices and meetings and client calls. He just forwarded the forms to his wife and told her to handle it. I, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about it. I went back and pulled out one of Dad's old letters, the one with the pressed flower. The cursive matched almost perfectly. I told myself it was just my imagination, wishful thinking, a trick of the heart. But the idea lodged itself in my chest and wouldn't let go. One afternoon I visited the nursing home again. It had been nearly a month. He was in the common room, reading, glasses perched low on his nose, a book of Thoreau open in his lap. When he saw me, he smiled. That same quiet smile he always had, like he knew more than he said but would never say it all. We made small talk. I asked about the weather. He asked about the kids. Then I asked carefully if he'd been writing to anyone lately. He looked at me, eyes twinkling behind the lenses. "Letters? Oh, always," he said. "There's something honest about a letter. You can't lie as easily when you write with your hands." I smiled, but I didn't press. Not yet, because in that moment I realized something. He wanted us to know, but only when we were ready to understand, and we weren't ready, not fully, not until the 3rd envelope arrived, addressed to my son. Chapter 4. A signature that didn't belong. The envelope for my son arrived on a rainy Tuesday. I remember that clearly because the dog tracked mud into the kitchen right as I was picking it up from the mailbox. And in the chaos of barking, mop water, and homework papers sprawled across the counter, I almost didn't open it until the next day. It was thinner than the others. Just one folded page, no school logo this time, just a printed header. Donation Acknowledgement, Central County Education Foundation. I unfolded it with one hand while stirring pasta sauce with the other. The letter thanked Mr. Edward Adler for his generous contribution to the Foundation's Youth Advancement Fund, specifically earmarked for summer STEM opportunities. It listed 3 recipients: Olivia Pierce, Ethan Adler, and my son Caleb. I stood there, wooden spoon dripping onto the stovetop, the steam from the pot fogging my glasses. Mr. Edward Adler, my father. There was no mistake. His full name was printed clearly in bold font at the bottom of the page, followed by donation amount $10,000. Date processed 2 months ago. Payment method certified bank check. Donor requested anonymity in public listings. My hand shook. I called the foundation that evening after dinner, pretending to be Dad's assistant. It was a small office. One woman answered, cheerful and chatty. "Oh yes," she said. "Mr. Adler was very sweet. Came in himself, if you can believe it. Said he wanted the money to go toward kids who showed promise, even if their parents couldn't always afford opportunity. Those were his words." I thanked her, hung up, and sat in the silence of my kitchen for a long, long time. Dad hadn't told anyone, not a word. And somehow he had managed to donate thousands of dollars on a fixed retirement income. The numbers didn't make sense. Unless he sold something. I drove to the nursing home the next morning. No call ahead, no waiting. I found him in his room by the window, a soft cardigan over his shoulders and a crossword puzzle in his lap. He looked up and smiled. "You came early today." I sat across from him, heart pounding. "Dad," I said, and I hated how my voice cracked, "did you donate money to the county foundation?" He didn't answer right away, just looked out the window for a while, fingers lightly tapping his pen against his knee. "I wanted to do something," he said finally, "something quiet, something that mattered." "But how?" I asked. "That's a lot of money." He reached down beside the chair and pulled out an old manila envelope. No lock, no pretense. Inside, a property deed now stamped sold, a check stub, a note scribbled in his handwriting for their future. He handed it all to me. "I sold the lake cabin," he said simply. "That cabin had been in our family for decades. We hadn't visited in years. We used to complain it was too far, too run down, too outdated. He had kept it, maintained it, paid taxes on it quietly. Then one day he let it go, for them, for us. I stared at him, tears blurring the edges of my vision. "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. He smiled, a tired, knowing smile. "No," he said, "but someone had to do something, and you all have so much already on your shoulders. I didn't want to be one more thing you carried." I left the nursing home that day with that envelope clutched to my chest like it was sacred, because maybe it was. Not just a record of a transaction, but of a man who had given everything, not because we asked, but because we never did. Chapter 5. The sound of a quiet regret. Guilt is a strange thing. It doesn't shout. It doesn't slam doors or raise its voice. It settles in like dust in an old house, slow, invisible at first, until one day you see it coating everything you thought was clean. That's what it felt like after I left Dad's room. I drove home in silence. No music, no radio, just the hum of the tires and the beating of my heart trying to make sense of the quiet heroism I had just witnessed. A man we had left behind had sold the only piece of real estate he owned just to make sure our children had a future brighter than his twilight, and none of us noticed. That night I pulled out a photo album, one I hadn't touched in years. There he was, grinning behind the grill at Caleb's 5th birthday party. There he was, asleep on the couch with Olivia in his arms. There he was, standing alone at my mother's grave, his posture straight but his shoulders so impossibly tired. We always said he was quiet, private, stoic. But maybe the truth was simpler and sadder. We never asked. We never stayed long enough to see him, not really. We praised ourselves for remembering Father's Day, for mailing cards on time, for the occasional visit. But he gave away a piece of his life so our children wouldn't miss out on theirs. And none of us even knew the cabin was gone. I called Lily the next day, told her everything. She went quiet, then whispered, "He did that for Olivia. He did that for all of them." There was a long pause. I told her it was the school, that she got lucky. "You weren't wrong," I said. "She did get lucky. She has him." Later that week, Mark came by unannounced, something he rarely did. He stood in my doorway holding an old photo frame, the three of us as kids, sitting in Dad's truck bed, eating peanut butter sandwiches. "Do you remember when he used to wake up at 4 a.m. just to drive us to the state science fair in Tulsa?" Mark asked. I nodded. I never thought to ask who paid for that hotel. I just assumed it happened. I didn't respond. There wasn't much to say when shame speaks louder than words. We all started visiting the nursing home more after that. Small things at first. Lily brought a new sweater. Mark brought crossword books and dark chocolate, Dad's favorite. I brought Caleb. That visit broke me in ways I didn't expect. Dad's eyes lit up when he saw his grandson, the way sunlight fills a room through an open curtain. They sat together for hours, Caleb explaining how space rockets worked with too many hand gestures, Dad listening like it was the most important lecture of his life. At one point, Caleb paused and asked, "Grandpa, do you think I'll be a real scientist one day?" Dad smiled. "You already are," he said. "You're just waiting for the world to catch up." I excused myself to the hallway. Leaning against the beige wallpaper, I cried. Not the loud, cinematic kind of crying. The quiet kind where your chest aches from the inside out and you realize just how many moments you missed, and how much grace you've been given anyway. In that moment, I knew one thing with aching clarity. He never wanted us to feel guilty. He just wanted us to remember, to look again, to see him not as a burden, not as background, but as a man still giving even with nothing left to give, and somehow still smiling while he did it. Chapter 6. The Things We Never Said. It was Lily who called for the meeting. Not a dramatic family intervention. Just a quiet Sunday lunch at her place, pot roast in the oven, kids sent off to the backyard, and the three of us, Mark, Lily, and I, sitting around the dining table that still had a crayon stain from when Olivia was 4. No one touched the food right away. Mark had his arms crossed, staring at the salt shaker like it owed him answers. Lily kept adjusting the placemats, straightening corners that didn't need straightening. I had brought the manila envelope Dad had given me, the deed, the check stub, the note, and laid it in the center of the table like it was evidence in a trial. For a long while no one spoke. Then Lily whispered, "We left him there." 3 words, simple, soft, but they cracked something open in the room. Mark exhaled hard. "We didn't abandon him, but his voice betrayed him. Didn't we?" I said. "We made a choice, one that was convenient, one that made us feel responsible, but deep down we didn't want to deal with the slow decline. We didn't want to feel guilty every time he forgot a name or repeated a story. We told ourselves he'd be better cared for," Lily added. "But maybe we just didn't want to care anymore." No one argued, because there was nothing left to defend. Mark leaned back, his eyes glassy. "You know what I remember? That year Mom was in and out of the hospital, Dad slept on a plastic chair by her bedside for 2 weeks straight. Brought her fresh flowers every morning from the gas station because the hospital shop was too expensive. He laughed once bitterly. We called him cheap, said he was obsessed with saving. We didn't see he was just trying to stretch every dollar for us. Lily nodded, tears rolling silently down her cheek. I told Olivia Grandpa was tired, that he needed quiet. That's why we weren't visiting much, but it wasn't for him, it was for me, because I didn't know how to sit across from someone who was slowly disappearing. I looked at both of them. We still have time, I said. He's still here. But what can we do? Lily asked. What makes up for years of not seeing him? Maybe nothing does, I said quietly, but we can stop looking away. We can show up. We can let him feel seen, heard, loved while he's still here to feel it. That afternoon we made a pact. No grand gestures, no staged apologies, just presence. We'd rotate visits. Bring the kids, share stories. Read aloud to him, ask him questions that weren't about his blood pressure or next appointment, but about him. His childhood, his regrets, his favorite songs. We wouldn't talk about what he did for the kids. Not yet. We sensed he didn't do it to be thanked. He did it because love, real love, doesn't wait for credit. It simply gives. The next day I brought Caleb to see him again. They played checkers. Dad let him win, of course. Caleb didn't know. As we left, I bent down and hugged him, not the kind of hug you give out of obligation, but the kind you give when words are too small. He held on a little longer than usual, and just before I pulled away, he whispered, "Thank you for coming back." Chapter 7, The Grandpa They Never Really Knew. The first to truly see him was Olivia. She came with Lily one Saturday morning, not because she was told to. She had overheard our conversation a week earlier that Dad used to read Hemingway and fix radios just for fun. She was curious. "Can I bring my notebook?" she asked Lily. "To draw, to ask him stuff." Lily didn't ask what stuff meant. At the nursing home, Dad was waiting on the porch in his cardigan, cup of tea in hand. When he saw them, he smiled, a little surprised maybe, but warmed in a way that only comes when someone you love unexpectedly chooses to show up. Olivia sat beside him, pulled out her notebook, and began. "Grandpa, what did you want to be when you were my age?" He chuckled. "A cowboy, then a writer, then a teacher, in that order." She scribbled. "Did you ever write anything?" He hesitated. "Little things, letters, a poem or two I never showed anyone." "Can I read one?" she asked, bold in that fearless way only children are. He paused, then nodded. "I'll have to dig them up. They're hidden between books and shame." She didn't understand the last part, not really, but she smiled anyway. "Okay." That was the first of many visits. The next week, Caleb came with me again, this time with his sketch pad. He wanted to draw the rocket his grandfather helped him build. He called it the Adler one. Ethan came later with Mark, quiet at first. But then Grandpa mentioned he'd once built a telescope out of scrap wood and lenses from a broken projector. Ethan's eyes lit up. "You built it yourself? Every bolt and bearing." They talked for an hour. When they left, Ethan asked Mark, "Why didn't you ever tell me Grandpa was an engineer?" Mark said nothing for a long time, then whispered, "Because I forgot." It was startling, really, how quickly the kids connected to him once we stepped out of the way. Not as a fragile old man, not as a patient on a schedule, but as a whole human being, one with stories, skills, opinions, and a quiet kind of wisdom that didn't come with a microphone but mattered more than anything we'd heard in years. He started to come alive again. His cheeks had color. He walked a little more each day. He told jokes, bad ones, mostly the kind that make kids groan and secretly smile. He pulled out old maps, told them about rivers he'd fished, canyons he'd hiked, a stray dog he once rescued from a hardware store parking lot. They asked him about his first kiss. He turned red. That's classified information. They begged him to write a memoir. He said he might if someone brought him a real pen. The staff noticed. One nurse pulled Lily aside and said, "He's different lately. Lighter, whatever you're doing, keep doing it." But we weren't doing anything special. We were just there. We were listening. And in doing so, we were discovering a man who'd been there all along, waiting. One afternoon, Olivia asked him, "Why did you give us the scholarship?" Dad went still. Then he smiled, because hope needs to go somewhere. He reached for her hand gently, and I figured your hearts were the safest place for it. Chapter 8, The Birthday Cake and the Unspoken Clock. It was Lily's idea again. "Nothing big," she said. "Just cake, balloons, the kids, and him." Dad never liked parties much. He used to say birthdays were just numbers playing dress up. But still, he never refused cake. So we picked a Sunday afternoon in early spring. The kind of day where sunlight lingers on the porch just a little longer, and the wind feels more like a whisper than a warning. Lily baked the cake herself, lemon with vanilla frosting, his favorite. Mark brought pizza. I brought photos we'd printed from recent visits, snapshots of Dad and the grandkids playing checkers, planting a small herb garden near the nursing home's back fence, laughing over juice boxes like school kids. We gathered in the community room at Rosewood Hills. Someone had tied blue and white streamers to the chairs. Olivia made a handmade sign that read, "Happy 79th, Grandpa." In bubble letters, each one colored differently. He walked in, a little slower than usual, but his smile, it lit up the room. The kids surrounded him with hugs and chatter and questions. Caleb had built a small wooden frame and presented it proudly. "It's for your poems," he said, "so you can hang them on your wall." Dad touched the frame like it was glass. "This is better than any trophy I ever got." Ethan played him a short piece on the keyboard, something he'd practiced all week. Olivia read aloud a paragraph she'd written titled, "What My Grandpa Taught Me That School Never Could." We all stood around listening, adults quiet, children beaming. He clapped the loudest when she finished. "I've never been anyone's essay before," he whispered. After cake, we passed around slices and settled into that easy rhythm families sometimes find when they stop trying so hard, where the silences are soft, not sharp, where the laughter isn't forced. Then he coughed, just once, but it was harsh, deep, like it came from somewhere far inside. He brushed it off with a sip of water. "Old pipes," he said, smiling, but Lily saw it. So did I. His hands trembled a little when he reached for the fork. And when Caleb leaned in to whisper something, Dad gently put a hand to his ear. "Say that again, sweetheart." A little louder than he used to. Mark helped him stand up to take a photo with the kids. Dad steadied himself against the table before anyone noticed. But we noticed. After the kids went outside with balloons, the three of us lingered. "Has he said anything about health?" Lily asked the nurse when she came in to collect dishes. The nurse paused. "He's still himself," she said gently. "But his last checkup showed some signs. Nothing urgent, but the lungs, the heart, they're not what they were, and he's been more tired lately." Mark looked away. I just nodded. "Should we be doing more?" Lily whispered. The nurse gave a kind smile. "You're here, you're showing up. That's already more than most." That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in the driveway of my house for a long time with the engine running. I thought about how easily love gets buried beneath appointments and phone calls and bills, and how quickly time turns corners when we're not watching. We had just found him again, and already we could feel him slipping through our fingers. Chapter 9. The poem tucked between the pages. It was Olivia who found it, tucked between the pages of an old book Dad had given her, The Old Man and the Sea. He'd said it was his favorite, that it understood something about aging that most people don't. She brought the book home, thinking it might help her write an essay. Instead, when she opened it later that evening, a folded piece of lined paper slipped out, yellowed at the edges, creased from years of being handled and refolded. She read it. Then quietly she handed it to Lily. By the time I got to their house, the letter was already on the kitchen table. Mark sat across from it, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. No one said anything as I picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakably Dad's, slanted, elegant, ink slightly smudged in one corner. At the top of the page, underlined twice in blue pen, was the title, To Those Who Forgot I Was Still Here, and the poem read, I have sat in rooms filled with silence, louder than any voice I used to raise. I have listened to clocks tick, not just through seconds, but through birthdays missed, and phone calls that never rang. I have watched my children build their lives like cathedrals, tall, proud, distant, and I have loved them from below, where no sunlight reached and no one looked down. I have known what it means to be the man who once knew how to fix everything except the fading of his own importance. But I have also seen beauty in the way a child's eyes look when they see you without knowing your history, only your kindness. I have planted my last seeds in the soil of their tomorrows, and if they ever read this, I want them to know. I was never waiting for them to come back. I was waiting for them to remember that I never left. By the end, none of us could speak. Lily wiped her face slowly, tears streaking down. Mark stared at the table like it had betrayed him. I folded the letter gently like something sacred because it wasn't bitterness. There was no blame in those lines, no accusations, just observation, longing and grace. A quiet man telling the truth the only way he knew how, on paper, with ink, when no one was watching. That night I stayed up reading his old journals, the ones he'd kept in a box under his bed. I had asked the nurse for them earlier that week. She said he'd once joked, when I can't speak anymore, maybe those pages will. And he was right. They told stories we'd forgotten. The time he skipped his own job interview to drive me to a spelling bee. The night Lily had pneumonia and he sat outside her hospital room reciting psalms he barely believed in. The first time Mark broke his arm skateboarding and Dad slept upright in a hospital chair for 36 hours without changing clothes. He never wrote about his pain, only our names, our milestones, our smiles. In a world that shouts to be noticed, my father whispered, but somehow his whispers are what echo now. Chapter 10. Giving him back his voice. The poem changed everything. It was like holding up a mirror we didn't want to face, a reflection of all the years we'd been absent and all the time he had quietly forgiven us. For once, none of us tried to move on quickly. We sat with it, let it sting, let it ache. And then we decided no more excuses, no more visits squeezed between errands, no more treating him like an obligation on the calendar. This time we would show up. The next Sunday, we all went together. Not separately, not in turns. All of us, kids, spouses, grandkids, filling the small lounge at Rosewood Hills. Dad looked startled when he saw us. "Is there a holiday I forgot?" he asked, half smiling. "No holiday," Lily said, "just us." For the first time in years, we sat around him the way we used to gather at the dinner table. The grandkids sprawled on the carpet with juice boxes. Mark's wife brought muffins. Lily had photo albums spread out. I carried the manila envelope, the deed, the check, the note, though I wasn't sure why. Something in me needed it close, like proof of who he really was. "Dad," I said carefully, "we've told enough of our stories. We want to hear yours." He chuckled. "You've heard them all 100 times. "Tell them again," Olivia said softly. "This time we'll actually listen." And so he began, not with bitterness, not with speeches, but with small stories like threads he'd been keeping in his pocket all this time. The time he hitchhiked across 3 states with $5 in his wallet just to see a baseball game at Wrigley Field. The day he proposed to Mom with a $1.20 ring and a promise he spent the rest of his life trying to keep. The night he almost gave up on teaching after being mocked by his first class, and how one thank you note from a shy student kept him going for another 30 years. The kids leaned in, wide-eyed. Mark leaned back, blinking too much. Lily kept her hands folded tight, as if afraid she'd fall apart if she let go. Then, almost as an afterthought, he said, "You know, I never cared much about money. I only ever cared that you had enough of a chance to go further than I did." His voice broke on the word chance, just slightly, but we heard it. And in that crack we understood the scholarship, the property he sold, the poems, the silence. They were all part of the same truth. He had never wanted wealth. He only wanted to be useful, to plant something that would outlive him. That night, as we left, Olivia whispered to me, "Grandpa doesn't just love us, he believes in us." And for the first time, I realized those two things were not the same. Love can be passive. Belief requires sacrifice. Chapter 11, The Weight of Each Breath. It began with the cough. Not the polite kind you clear with a sip of water. Not the seasonal kind you blame on pollen. This one was deeper. It rattled through his chest like loose stones in a jar. And it didn't go away. The first time it happened during one of our visits, Dad waved it off. "Old lungs," he said, smiling faintly. "They just like to remind me they are still here." But the cough grew harsher, longer. His shoulders heaved more when he laughed. He started taking the stairs slower, pausing halfway to tie his shoe, though the laces were already neat. Even the grandkids noticed. "Grandpa, are you okay?" Caleb asked one afternoon. "I'm fine, buddy," Dad said, ruffling his hair. "Takes a little more fuel to keep this old engine running, that's all." But his hand lingered on the armrest just a little too long. And when he thought no one was watching, his chest rose and fell like someone climbing a hill that never ended. One morning, the nursing home called Lily. "Mr. Adler had some trouble breathing last night," the nurse said gently. "We'd like to run some tests, just precaution." We all went, sat in the bland waiting room with faded magazines and the smell of antiseptic. When they wheeled him out after the scans, he looked small in that chair, swallowed by the hospital gown, his skin pale as the sheets. Still, he smiled. Always he smiled. "Don't look so serious," he teased. "I'm not going anywhere today. They're just making sure I'm still worth the price of admission." But when the doctor came in, clipboard in hand, the smile faded. It wasn't dire, not yet, but it wasn't good either. "The lungs are weakened, scar tissue, possibly copped. His heart is compensating, but it's working harder than it should. He'll need medication, rest, close monitoring. And you'll need to prepare for the possibility that time may be shorter than expected." Time. That word always sounds abstract until someone uses it like currency, as if the balance in the account is running low and no deposit can add more. We drove back in silence. Dad sat by the window, watching the trees blur past. Finally, he said softly, "You don't need to worry, everyone has a finish line. I've just caught a glimpse of mine." "Don't say that," Lily whispered, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, but he only patted her hand. "It's not sad," he said. "It's honest, and honesty is all I have left to give." That night I couldn't sleep. I thought about the scholarship letters, the journals, the poem titled "To Those Who Forgot I Was Still Here." I thought about how we had wasted years, and how fragile the gift of now truly was. And for the first time in my adult life, I prayed. Not for more time, though God knows I wanted it. I prayed for courage, to make whatever time was left matter. For him, for us. Chapter 12. The day we finally said it, it was Mark who suggested it. No hospitals, no nurses checking vitals every 15 minutes, just us. One day, a real day with Dad. And so we planned it, not grand, not formal. Just a Sunday at Rosewood Hills with permission to use the sunny courtyard by the garden. The kids brought blankets and soccer balls. Lily cooked enough food to feed 3 families. Mark brought his old guitar, strings slightly out of tune. And I brought something heavier than all of that, a list of things I had never said to my father. When he came out, slowly walking with his cane, the children cheered like he was a hero returning from battle. His smile, oh, that smile, erased years of silence in an instant. We sat him in the middle, under the oak tree, as though the whole gathering revolved around him. And maybe, finally, it did. Lunch was loud, messy, wonderful. Pizza slices and potato salad, kids spilling lemonade, Mark strumming chords that didn't quite fit together but somehow sounded right in the moment. For a while, Dad looked simply happy. Content the way a man does when he realizes he is still the center of his family, not the shadow. Then came the quiet part. It started with Lily. She reached for his hand across the table. "Dad," she whispered, "I'm sorry for leaving you here, for convincing myself it was for your good when really it was for mine. I was scared of seeing you age. I thought it would make me weaker, but you've been the strongest one all along." He squeezed her hand gently. "Oh, Lily, don't waste breath on sorry. Just keep living in a way that makes me proud. That's apology enough." Mark cleared his throat next. He never was good with emotions. "Dad," he said, staring at the guitar strings, "I used to think you didn't understand me, that you were too strict, too practical, but now I see you just wanted me steady when the world wasn't. You gave me more than I knew, and I should have said thank you a long time ago." Dad chuckled softly. "Better late than never. Besides, you weren't as hard to raise as you think. Just stubborn. You got that from me." Mark laughed, but his eyes shone wet. And then it was my turn. I pulled the folded poem from my pocket, "To Those Who Forgot I Was Still Here," and placed it in his hands. "I read it," I said, "every word, and it broke me, Dad, because it was true, we forgot. But I don't want you to think we ever stopped loving you. We just got lost, and I'm so sorry we made you feel invisible." He looked at me for a long while, his eyes soft but piercing. "I wasn't invisible," he said. "I was right here, and sometimes love doesn't need to be loud to survive, but hearing you now, it means the world." Then came the grandchildren. Olivia showed him the essay she'd written about him. Ethan handed him a small rocket model and said, "This is our project, Grandpa." Caleb climbed onto his lap and whispered, "You're my best friend." Dad's face crumpled then, not from weakness but from something deeper, the rare moment when joy is too heavy for the heart to carry alone. We ended the day with a simple song. Mark strummed. We sang out of tune. The kids clapped offbeat. And Dad leaned back in his chair, eyes closed, lips moving softly with the words, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." For the first time in years, it felt like we weren't preparing for goodbye. We were living a hello we should have said long ago. Chapter 13. When the light flickered. The week after our gathering, Dad seemed brighter. The nurses said he smiled more, ate better, even asked if he could help water the flowers in the courtyard again. We let ourselves believe it, that somehow love and laughter were medicine stronger than any prescription. That maybe, just maybe, we had bought more time. But time doesn't bargain. It only gives what it already decided. It happened on a Thursday evening. Lily had stopped by after work bringing soup. She said he was in good spirits, telling her an old story about driving across the Midwest with nothing but a paper map and a bag of apples. Then, mid-sentence, he coughed harder than before. His hand trembled, the spoon clattered against the tray. "Dad?" she asked, reaching for him. He tried to wave it off, but his breath caught, like an engine misfiring, like a match that couldn't quite catch flame. The nurse was called, oxygen brought in, vitals checked. His chest rose and fell in shallow bursts, each one stealing more color from his face. For the first time he looked fragile, not just old, not just tired, but breakable. By the time we all arrived, Mark, myself, the kids bundled in jackets, the crisis had passed. The oxygen steadied him, the monitors beeped their steady reassurance. But the image stayed, his body so small against the wide hospital bed, wires tracing his pulse like fragile lifelines. He looked at us and whispered, almost apologetically, "Sorry to scare you," as if nearly losing him was an inconvenience. That night, the doctor didn't soften the truth. "The lungs are failing faster than we thought," she said quietly in the hallway. "We'll manage the symptoms, but this is progressive. You should prepare yourselves. Weeks, maybe months, not years, weeks." The word hit like a stone through glass. Inside the room, Dad was awake, eyes heavy but clear. He must have read the truth in our faces because he smiled gently. "Don't cry," he said. "Not yet. We still have days, and days are everything, if you live them." The grandkids crowded around his bed. Caleb climbed up carefully, laying his small hand over Grandpa's. "You're not going to leave, right?" he asked. Dad's eyes filled, but his voice stayed steady. "Not until you're ready, buddy, and even then, not really." That night, as we drove home, the silence in the car was different. It wasn't the silence of forgetting anymore. It was the silence of fear that we had just spoken our last apologies, sung our last songs, eaten our last cake with him. The clock was ticking louder now, and for the first time none of us pretended we couldn't hear it. Chapter 14, the tribute while he still could hear it. After the doctor's words, we knew we couldn't just wait. Waiting meant drifting. And drifting was what had stolen years from us already. So we planned something. Not a funeral dressed as a gathering, not another awkward party, but a day where he would hear with his own ears what he meant to us, while he was still here to smile at it. We called it Grandpa's Day. The grandkids made invitations out of colored paper and stickers. Ethan drew a rocket on his. Olivia wrote, "Please come celebrate the greatest storyteller we know." Caleb simply wrote in big letters, "Come for Grandpa." We invited everyone, cousins, neighbors, even a few of his old teaching colleagues, people he thought had long forgotten him. And to our surprise, most said yes. On the morning of the event, Rosewood Hills gave us the big common room. We decorated it with photographs, not the staged family portraits, but candid snapshots. Dad asleep on the couch with a baby on his chest, Dad repairing a broken toy with duct tape, Dad grilling hot dogs in the rain while everyone laughed from the porch. When he walked in, cane in hand, his eyes widened. "What is all this?" he asked, bewildered. "It's yours," Lily said softly. "All of this is yours." One by one, people stood up to speak. Mark went first. He read a letter he'd written, shaky on the edges but strong in the center. "You were the man who showed me what responsibility looks like, even when I didn't want it, especially when I didn't want it." Lily read a story about the time Dad stayed up all night sewing a Halloween costume because she'd changed her mind at the last minute. "I don't think I ever said thank you," she admitted, her voice breaking. I read his poem aloud, the one titled "To Those Who Forgot I Was Still Here." But this time, I didn't let the words sting. I let them heal. And when I finished, I looked at him and said, "We remember now, Dad, we see you." Then came the grandkids. Olivia sang a song she'd written herself, a shaky melody about heroes who don't wear capes. Ethan presented a model rocket named the Edward Adler Explorer. And Caleb, climbing into his lap, whispered into the microphone he insisted on holding, "You're my best story, Grandpa." The room went still. Even the nurses wiped their eyes. When everyone had spoken, Dad leaned forward in his chair, his voice low but steady. "I don't deserve all this," he said. "I only did what any father should." But then his eyes softened. "Still, thank you. You've given me a gift most people never get. To hear the words they usually carve on stone while I can still answer back." He paused, smiling through tears. "And my answer is simple. I loved you then. I love you now. And I'll love you long after the breath leaves me." That night, after everyone had gone, we stayed with him a little longer. No speeches, no photos, just sitting, listening to the soft hum of the oxygen machine, the rise and fall of his chest. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt full, like gratitude finally finding a home. Chapter 15. The letter he left in their hands. It came in an envelope. Plain white, with all three grandchildren's names written in his careful cursive across the front. Olivia, Ethan, Caleb. He handed it to me one afternoon and said, "Not for you, for them, but maybe you'll want to read it first." The paper was thick, the kind you buy when you want words to last longer than you. And the ink, though shaky, never wavered in meaning. The letter read, "To my grandchildren, by the time you read this, you may already know more about me than I ever told you. You've seen the photos, heard the stories, maybe even laughed at the way I hummed Sinatra songs off-key. But there are things I need you to carry forward. Not for me, for you. First, remember this. Education is not just what happens in classrooms. It is curiosity, discipline, kindness, and the courage to ask why when others stay quiet. Second, money comes and goes. I gave what I had so you could have chances. But money is never the point. Use it, but don't serve it. Build with it, but don't bow to it. Third, love loudly. Don't assume people know. Tell them. Write it, show up. Regret is the heaviest luggage a person can carry, and love is the only thing light enough to balance it. And finally, when you look in the mirror one day and wonder if you are enough, remember this. You were enough for me the very first time I held you. That truth will never change. With all the days I was given, I chose to plant them in you. Be kind, be brave. And when the time comes, be ready to give as quietly as I once did. Always, Grandpa. By the time I finished reading, Olivia was crying openly. Ethan sat with his jaw tight like he was trying to memorize every word, and Caleb whispered, "I'll keep it safe forever." Dad watched them from his chair, not saying anything, just smiling like a man who had finally unpacked a burden he'd been carrying his whole life. That night, I made copies of the letter, one for each child and one for me. Because though he wrote it for them, I needed those words too. They weren't just instructions for the future. They were proof of a love we almost lost and a reminder that his truest legacy was not money, not property, not even the scholarships. It was wisdom. It was presence. It was the kind of love that continues long after the last page is turned. Chapter 16. The legacy that outlives us all. In the end, we never did tell the world that our father was the anonymous donor. We didn't need to, because his gift was never about recognition. It was about continuation. He left this world not with fanfare, but with the same quiet dignity he carried through every year of his life. And though the chair at family gatherings now sits empty, his presence has not faded. It lingers in the scholarships that opened doors for his grandchildren. It breathes in the lessons tucked into letters, poems, and long-forgotten journals. It echoes in the way Olivia pursues her studies with fire, in Ethan's determination to build, in Caleb's unshakable kindness. He is there, always. Looking back, the story isn't about us leaving him in a nursing home. It's about him never leaving us, not really. While we measured life by comfort and convenience, he measured it by love. And in the end, that love outlived the walls of Rosewood Hills, outlived money, outlived time. He taught us that family is not proven in speeches or gifts, but in quiet presence, in sacrifice, in belief that the future can be brighter if you choose to plant your days like seeds. That is his legacy, and now it is ours to carry forward. Dear listeners, thank you for spending time with us on this journey. May it remind you to hold close the people who often give the most quietly, and to speak the words of love while there is still time to be heard. From all of us at Twist of Revenge, we wish you health, peace, and the warmth of family that never fades. Take care of each other, and may your own story be filled with love that lasts beyond a lifetime.